Hi y'all, this is House Guest and I am your host, Kenzie Elizabeth. Think a Gen Z wannabe Martha Stewart meets Dolly Parton trying to live in a Nancy Meyers movie in her 20s. We talk all about life, relationships, navigating your 20s, closing out the bars, or waking up at 5 a.m. depending on our vibe that week. Ultimately, living our best lives and figuring it out along the way. So come hang out. Sometimes I have guests on who do really cool things, some of my best friends, or it's just me and my house that I spend way too much time in. So let's get into the show. Hi, y'all. Welcome back to House Guest Podcast. Guys, this is like one of my favorite follows of 2024, Kate Glavan. She is, first off, so well-spoken. Like, listening to her in today's podcast, I was like, I need to actually go back to school. Like, actually. She's very well-spoken. She's very wise. She creates running and grief content. So you can only imagine how much I've consumed her content this year. She is like she's like actually a marathon girly. You know, like I joke about being a marathon girly, but she is a for real marathon girly. She lost her father last fall, and we talk a lot about grief, a lot about running. If you've lost a parent, or if everyone at some point in their life experienced grief, you need to know how to be a friend to someone in grief. Like, we're just talking about it all, and she's so intelligent. I just love, like, this is one of probably my favorite episodes I've recorded. I just loved our conversation so much, and I think you guys are going to love her as well. So without further ado, let's welcome Kate on to the show. You are my inspo.
Oh my God.
Completely. I am a new runner.
Love it.
Okay, I've really gotten into it. Like, the furthest I've run is like 4 miles.
No, love.
But that's huge for me.
It is.
Because I have never run 4 miles in my, I don't even think I'd run 2.5.
No, same. I hated running growing up. And I feel like being a runner on social media, people assume that I've done it my whole life. I played volleyball most of my life. And so volleyball, the only way that you ever run is like if it's punishment. It's like if you fuck up in practice, it's like get on the line and sprint. So I always had really bad connotations with running of like, why would anyone do this willingly? Like, you'd watch people do the turkey trot thing, like the 5Ks.
Oh, I made fun of them. And by the way, that's going to be me this year.
Same. It's so funny how the tables turn. I was always like, why would you run a marathon? Like, that's psychotic. Like, it's so much fun to play with a team. And so I had a lot of good memories playing team sports growing up. My mom's a volleyball coach, so it was very like in the family to do. What position did you play? It's an outside hitter.
Okay, that's what I would have guessed.
Well, Texas is big for volleyball.
Yeah, I played too.
Yeah, love. What were you?
Setter.
Okay, love. I wish I would have stayed a setter. I was a setter when I was little, and then I was like, I want to be a hitter. But anyways.
We're fun.
So I played at NYU, and I had a bad experience there, so I ended up quitting my junior year. And then that was kind of like my coming to Jesus moment where I was like, okay, I've always been in like structured team environments when I've move my body. I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I don't want a coach telling me what to do. I don't want a trainer writing out my workout. I want to have that autonomy. And I never really had that. And so previous to like my experience with running, I had a rocky relationship with body, food, eating disorder stuff in high school. And so when I quit volleyball, it was kind of this like new chapter of like, I really want to reclaim moving my body and finding a way that works for me. Once again, not having a coach telling me how to get to the point that I want to be, but like I can structure it myself. And so when I was thinking about what I wanted to do to like stay active kind of in this in-between period, like right after I quit, running seemed like the most democratic, easy, accessible thing. Like, in theory, all you need is a pair of running shoes and just like go outside. And so I'd been in New York for 2 years. I went to NYU and I'd done a little bit of exploring in the city, just kind of like going to class, going to my internships, but I'd never really done like the West Side Highway loop, which like now I run all the time. And so I remember thinking like, I don't know if I can run longer than 30 seconds. Like, genuinely, I don't know if I have the capacity to do this, but I really want to be a corny tourist and go see the Statue of Liberty. So like my dorm in the East Village, I remember I kind of like mapped out generally like how it was to get there. It's a few miles, right? And so I did a little bit of like a walk jog situation and I eventually made it there. And I remember getting to the Statue of Liberty, like taking a selfie, sending it to my mom and being like, wow, I never thought I could do that. Right. And even though I was walking for most of it, I will say, like, admittedly, I was not running as people think now. It felt so empowering. And I think it was this step of like a lot of self-discovery and a lot of trust in myself. And I think that's the beautiful thing for running for me. It's like you are competing against yourself every day. You can compete against other people, but it's really, really individual. And like whenever I talk about it on social media, I always just tell people like, you have to find a way to make it sustainable for you. So I love that like you're getting into it because I think like my early days of running and just like those really fresh memories I had with it are some of the most like beautiful times of it. And I wish I had more like documentation when I first started running.
I love it so much, and I've never liked it before in my life.
No, it's bizarre.
It's just something like shifted in me. Have you seen like in your mid-20s, you're getting married and running a marathon?
Yep. Yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah, but I'm nowhere even near the marathon. So the joke's on me. I'm not getting married and I'm not running a marathon.
You will be. You will be. You say that, you're going to be there.
But here's the thing. I'm so extreme. Like I'm so all or nothing. I think I'll be doing a half marathon. I don't think I'll be doing a full marathon. Also, it's just like really time consuming. And I already have like 17 other hobbies.
Yes.
And in my life of all my hobbies, I'm already running out of time.
Totally.
Like I can't needlepoint and garden and cook and read and do all this stuff and run a marathon. Something's got to give.
Yes.
So maybe I'll do a half.
Yes. I think a half is great. And I think you get the itch to run a full after you've done a half as well. I really didn't have any sort of expectation of ever wanting to run a race. Like coming from playing competitive athletics my whole life, when I got into running, I was like, Mom, I'm never signing up for a race. Like I'm never signing up for a race with running. And it was about 4 years or so where I really got the itch of like, okay, I'm running a lot. I like it. You know, wouldn't it be cool if I did something with this? And that was after I signed with Hoka, who I'm sponsored by now. And so they had a list of races that they like work with. A lot of them are West Coast. There are some trail races, some like crazy 100-mile races. Not crazy. But they had a half marathon on there. And I just thought like, you know, I've never run the distance of a half marathon. I've run maybe 6 miles, but you know, if I put in a little bit of work, I think I'll be able to do it. So once again, that journey of just like believing in yourself and taking the time to dedicate it to yourself, like it's really beautiful with running. Cause every time I run, I'm like, I know that I distinctly could not do this years ago. Right. It's not just like a natural thing. It's like you really have to put in effort with it. And regardless of your pace, your distance, or your goals with it, I think like everyone can feel that sort of like self-accomplishment with running.
I love that about running. And I feel similarly with weightlifting. I love working out. I've always loved working out. I love working out and doing the workouts that I love to do.
Totally.
Okay.
Same.
But before I would have told you I love to work out, but I like hate to run. Okay. So things are shifting.
Yeah, we're shifting.
We're shifting. I'm evolving. I'm maturing. I'm growing up. But I loved weightlifting because I could see tangibly that I was getting better. I could see that I was going up in weight. And now with running, it's like, I can't believe that I just did that. And it feels so amazing, like to accomplish really anything when it comes to running.
No, totally.
But, you know, I love marathon content, but I love marathon content. I'm comfort in my own bed. I love it when I'm in pajamas. I have my skincare on. I'm drinking my lemon like tea. Like I love marathon content. Well, that's how I found you.
Yeah.
I love watching people. I love watching people run.
Yeah.
You know?
I think the marathon is beautiful. And, you know, my first marathon was the New York City Marathon, which was last November, which feels like it was 5 years ago, but it was like not even a year ago. And I signed up for this race after I had a really big injury. So I had a stress fracture in my knee. I was already signed up to run a different marathon with Hoka, had to pull out of that race. And so like being online and being a runner, having an injury sucks because it's like, you have to tell your audience, obviously. Like some runners don't talk about injuries, which I think is bad. Like I always am very transparent with grief, with running, with everything. So when I got injured and had to pull out of this marathon, I felt so embarrassed and like so much shame around that because like, you know, Hoka was getting me into this race and all these people were rooting me on. And now it's like, fuck, I can't do it. So when I was injured, I had a few weeks where I couldn't walk. So I was going to a lot of PT. And then Planned Parenthood reached out to me of like, hey, like we know you're injured, but do you want to run the New York City Marathon? And it was like at a point when I couldn't even run for 30 seconds. Like I was back to like my base again because of this injury. And I talked to my physical therapist, who I'm like really close with now, who's just seen this like transformation for me. And I was like, Mike, like Planned Parenthood wants me to run the marathon. Like, I want to run the New York City Marathon. Like, I don't know if I'll be able to do it. Like, what if I sign up for it and then I get to the race and I can't do it? Like, how embarrassing that would be again. Once again, I felt these themes of just like shame and guilt and like people, the pressure of social media on me. But I knew I would regret it if I didn't sign up for it. So I told them like, I'm in, like, we'll see how I get there. And I think it was a beautiful race for me because I didn't set a time goal on myself. I was like, I just want to get there healthy and finish it. Like that was the goal with the marathon. So I trained all throughout the summer, made it to race day. And I think the really interesting thing about marathons is you see everyone out there. You see all abilities, all paces, all ages, all sizes. And it really is like a democratic sport. You know, I think anyone can train for a marathon, which is a beautiful thing. Like a lot of other athletic endeavors and just things, you know, it's only certain people can do those things really well. But just to watch people like hugging their families and cry and like hearing about everyone's stories of like why they chose to sign up, I think that was a really beautiful thing. And, you know, running can be about like the performance aspect of it and the fancy times and Boston Boston qualifying and stuff. But for me, running has always been about like why I'm running and like the mental side of it, and kind of like running is a theme that gets me through different chapters of my life.
I agree. I just love it. And I love watching the marathon content.
No, it'll be you. Don't worry.
No, I love watching the marathon content of just all the different stories and when people are running and when they, oh my God, like when someone like they reunite with their family and everyone's crying. Like,
oh my God.
I'm like getting teary-eyed right now just thinking about it. It makes me so emotional. If someone is listening and they want to get into running, what are your best tips?
Ooh, give yourself a lot of time. It's not going to happen overnight. And I think a good exercise to get into it is like doing a hybrid, like walk jog situation. And I feel like a lot of people think that like, oh, if I'm not running 5 miles, I'm not even running at all. And like, genuinely, I still walk on a lot of my runs. Like it's hot as hell in New York. Like I have to take walking breaks all the time. So I think making yourself a really like long plan that you'll have a lot of time to do with. There's something called Couch to 5K, which a lot of people use to train with. And it builds you up in a way where like you're not going to get burnt out, you're not going to get injured, and you will be able to run a 5K. So I think that's a really good place to start. And like I said earlier, I think for me, one thing I've learned with training is like thinking about it as like time on your feet versus distance. Cause I think we get in the fancy like running, I want to run 10 miles or this many miles, but sometimes I'll be like, I'm going to put 30 minutes on my watch and I'm just going to move for 30 minutes. Like whether that's like me jogging, walking, whatever, just getting that on your watch or like your phone or whatever you're tracking it with. I think that's a really sustainable way to start. So like you don't get burnt out and like start to hate it again. Mm-hmm. And like my experience with running, I think pacing is really hard because I was told like when you run, you sprint, that's it. And learning to slow down is really, really challenging. And I think to be able to run, you have to just like get rid of your ego too, because you're going to want to get these fancy paces and all of that and feel like you have to hit certain splits and post it on social media and get on Strava. But it's like so much more about your own journey with it. So I just tell people to like really, you know, hone into your own individual like goals with it and like why you are choosing to run.
I use the Nike Run Club app. That's how I got into it.
Coach Bennett, right?
Coach Bennett. I am obsessed with that man.
Love, yeah.
When he commented on my TikTok,
shut up.
You literally couldn't tell me I wasn't a celebrity.
No.
Like
you're like, I listen to you every day.
I was like, Coach, but like, you don't understand. Like you and I, like we're really close.
Friends. Yeah.
We're friends. Like
you know so much about me.
You know so much about me. But seriously, like I've done Couch to 5K. I liked Couch to 5K, but I didn't love running when I did it. When I switched over to do a Nike Run Club with Coach Bennett.
With the guided,
is when I was like, wait, I love this and it's so motivating and it's so comforting. And there's just, I hate when they use someone else that isn't Coach Bennett.
Like, give me my guy.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, why isn't Coach Bennett here?
Yeah,
it's like you get a substitute teacher and you like love the teacher originally, you know? But no, I love Coach Bennett.
Yeah.
So much.
I think having people to support you when you're running, even people that don't really care about the running aspect of it, but can cheer you on. Like when I first started running, my mom's an athlete. She was a professional volleyball player, so she's very athletic. But I would text her like, I went on a 3-mile run and like send her a screenshot of it, like of the stats or something. And just her knowing that I was doing that and really dedicating my time to that. And regardless if she knew about like the specifics of what I was going for or like why I was doing it, I think to have a support system when you're doing it is really important because it can be isolating to feel like you're on an island and you're just like running and you don't have anyone to talk to. And I think as you start to train for races, I think finding community is really important because everyone's gone through injuries. Everyone's been like, how early do I have to get there before the race starts? What are these gels that I have to eat during the race? So I think a lot of the quote, like stupid questions you might feel like you have, I think you'll always find answers in community. And so I started a run club with Hoka last year because I'd been on social media. I have like so many young women, like 96% young women on my social media, which I love. And I thought about just all these young women that are fresh out of college, don't have friends, don't have community. It's kind of a disservice that I'm not like creating a space for them to like meet each other and like become friends potentially. And so I talked to Hoka, who I've worked with, and I was like, hey, you guys have a store in Flatiron. Do you ever do events out of there? Could I start a run club? And they were like, yeah, we don't care. Like, go for it. So they gave me the green light to just like run it as I wanted to do it. And so I was like, I want it to be like focused on young women. I want it to be Saturday mornings once a month and kind of tie in some other brands that I work with and like get everyone to experience, you know, that beautiful day of like running with community. And I think the most rewarding part of that aspect of like my running career has just been seeing the friendships. Like there's been a few girls that I've met at the run club, and after the run's over, people come up and talk to me. And there are these 3 girls that came up to me and they were like just chatting me up a storm. And I was like, oh my God, like, how do you guys know each other? And they're like, we met today. And they seemed like they'd been friends for years. And then fast forward, there was a different group of girls that sent me a selfie after they ran the Brooklyn Half Marathon. And they were like, we met at your run club and we figured out that we were all signed up for the same race. So we ended up training together. Like, thank you for bringing us together. And they're still friends to this day. They're like a really cute like friend group in Brooklyn. So that has been the most rewarding part of just seeing how running can bring people together, specifically young women, where I feel like a lot of us maybe don't have like, you know, we're not trying to be in the Olympics. We're just trying to move our body and we have our own personal goals. But to like have friends that are also doing those same things, I think can be just like so rewarding, like when you are running.
I have a runner friend, and there's not one run that I go on that I don't text her about.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, screenshot immediately. Like
I've shin splints, something came up.
I don't even know if I've stopped the Strava app by the time I've texted her, because I need her to know.
I need her to know everything. Yeah, exactly. No, and it's so healthy to do so too. And like you said, or like I was saying earlier, like just to have other people that are cheering for you and like knowing the struggle, because then when they see you succeed, like they know the dark moments and the bad moments too.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm not like at the point where I've had injuries yet. Knock on wood.
You're doing
like, seriously,
great, sweetie.
I'm knocking everywhere. I'm like, I shouldn't have said that out loud.
Injuries are crazy.
I'm not like at that point yet, but I'll be texting you at this point.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, all the questions, all the things.
No, but I do think I'll end up like when I started running, it was really just to train for a 5K. But by the way, I didn't even end up running because I was out of town. So whatever.
As you should.
But it was just
You've run over a 5K now.
Yeah, but it was like, it's fine. I can do it.
Yeah.
So that's really like what I cared about.
Exactly.
But as I've gotten more into it, I've gotten the bug. Like I wouldn't be shocked if I did a half marathon.
Yeah.
Like it really depends on like where my life goes, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Totally. I think you'll find like the timing and stuff. And like it is a time commitment. You know, you have to like kind of go to bed early on a Friday because you have to run on a Saturday morning, like doing a long run. So
the going to bed early thing for me, very easy.
No, easy for me. I know it's like not a hard ask for me to do all that stuff, but other people are like, what do you mean I can't go out? And I'm like, you can. Like I've definitely done it where you go out and do a long run. Do you feel good? Definitely not. But I think it is really possible to have like a balanced social life and run a half or something like that. Running a marathon, a little bit different because you're just kind of beat up all the time. But I think when I trained for my last marathon, which was out in California at Big Sur, I was going out and just like hanging out with friends, and my running performance wasn't right there, but the race was a little bit easier of a race. It was a harder race. And so I knew that I wasn't going for like a time. And so I was like, hey, I just want to get this done. But I really knew that I want to like hang out with friends, not say no to everything. Cause I think that can be hard too. Like knowing you have a 10-mile run the next day and you're like, well, do I go out and get drinks with my friends or not? Because I have to run tomorrow. And I think I really wanted to prioritize like balance between those things too.
And that's very healthy.
Yeah. Because I think if you're all or nothing with it and then you're just running by yourself, you're only really focused on like how many miles you're running, it can become a really like toxic, just like obsessive way to live.
It's a very slippery slope.
Yeah. And like it starts off once again as like a healthy, empowering thing. But then I think when you lack the community and lack like balance in other aspects of your life, it becomes kind of tough to stay sane with it.
For me, running has helped so much with grief. And that's something that I love how much you share about online. There was just, at least for me, I've heard a lot of other people who have gone through loss, so I'm assuming you probably felt similarly, but other people who have lost someone, it just felt like, there was just like so much in your body.
Yeah.
And I like had to go somewhere. I had to go somewhere. And like the only thing that felt right, even when I was doing other workouts, it wasn't getting the job done.
Yeah.
And not that it has healed anything, but it helped. It really has helped me a lot. So running and grief for me has been like, I don't want to say 90 day because it's not like you don't get over it. You don't.
No.
Unfortunately.
It's with you forever.
Yeah, it's with you forever.
Girlies.
This is the life you have to live. Did you join, this is a total side note, did you happen to join any like Facebook grief groups?
No.
Okay, so it's been helpful.
Okay.
But also there's people in there who are like, it was 20 years ago and it's not gotten better. And
oh my God.
Every single thing is the same. And I still feels like day one that this happened. And I'm like, fuck.
I know.
Like, God, I'm like, do you not realize that people who just joined this group
don't want to hear that.
They don't want to hear that. Also, I do think, I personally don't plan to be in that position in 20 years.
Right,
I think everyone is different. It's just, you never get over it. You never.
It's a part of you.
It's a part of you forever. You learn how to live with it. It's like, I've had to explain that like grief is a basketball. And at first when it happens, it's just like right there in front of you. You can't see anything else. But then you eventually build a life around the basketball.
Yeah.
Or it's like a rock in your pocket and you just get stronger.
Yeah.
So it just feels different.
Yeah.
But it's been like very helpful.
Yeah.
Running has.
Yeah. And like my kind of context with my losing my dad, I was running the New York City Marathon. So I signed up for that in June. And it was around August when I got a call from my mom that was like, hey, like dad's not feeling good. We're going to take him to the hospital. And like context, my dad has had 3 heart attacks. So we assumed it was like heart stuff because that's what he's had his whole life. You know, walked every single day, ate really healthy, just genetically had a really bad heart. So I was in New York, all my family's back in Minnesota, and they went to the doctor. And I remember my mom gave me a call and it was like, we found like weird stuff that we don't know what to do with. Like we're going to get a full like body scan. And then turns out it was cancer and, you know, stage 4 terminal cancer. And that was a language that I'd never had. No one in my family has ever had cancer before. It was extremely unfamiliar and also just extremely jarring of like, what? We just thought this was some little thing. And then like, my dad is dying this next year or two. So I was in New York all alone when that happened. And I was just kind of like, what the fuck? And it was right in the middle of my marathon training. And so during that time of like, you know, getting back the medical news and then my dad going and getting all these tests and then deciding if he wants to go down chemo or like what route we want to do with care, it was just super confusing. And I felt like I had no control or certainty over anything in my life. I was in a really bad place mentally, as you can imagine, as all of us go through, where it just felt like my whole kind of vision of my life was crumbling, you know? And a lot of people on socials, of course, were asking me like, are you going to pull out of the marathon? Are you still going to run it? And for me, it was like, fuck no. Like if anything, I'm going to run it for my dad and run it stronger, faster, whatever. And when we got the diagnosis in August, I thought my dad was going to be at the marathon for sure. We were given like 1 to 2 years to live. And after diagnosis, he passed 20 days later. So like it was before the marathon. My dad passed in September. And once he passed, it was like this really bizarre kind of space I was in where I was just walking through the world and like didn't feel like myself, didn't feel like I had a sense of self. And all I really knew that I had control over was running. And it was the one thing that it was a constant in my life. I knew that on November 5th, the New York City Marathon's happening and I'm going to run it. Everything else in my life was fucked up. Like I didn't know what was happening to like my mom, my brother, my health insurance, my this, my that. Like once you lose someone, you have to go through just like a litany of things to process after. And I think that's something they don't tell you about like grieving a loss as well, is like all this bizarre like bureaucratic shit. It's like you're already grieving the loss of a person that you loved so dearly. And then like Verizon Wireless is like charging you and calling you and the insurance companies.
And they're like an asshole on the phone too.
Yeah. And I'm like, hey, like my dad just died. Like what, can we relax with this? So I think running was this beautiful outlet for me. Like you said earlier, I felt like I was just chaotic. Like I was just spinning, like anxiety was just spinning all the time. And running was the one time that I had alone to myself to just really process and think. And there's something about kind of getting in that steady state of cardio that I think you get into a flow state with it where you don't even feel like you're running at some points. I think as I was ramping up like different distances, I was just flowing. And I think also too, like not a good thing, but it was a little bit of like an avoidance mechanism. Like I just wanted to go on a run and kind of keep going so I didn't have to deal with the shit in my life. I was like, 20 miles, let's keep going. Longer, let's keep doing it.
I also do think in a way that's healthy. When I was talking to my therapist recently, I was like, because with grief, I've been in and out of therapy my entire life, and I always really want to handle everything I can in the healthiest way. And so I went into this and I was like, if I'm going to stay on this earth, I've got to get through it.
Yeah,
like make some changes. Like I'm going to, like I have so much I need to do. So even when I was saying this, I never felt like there was a right or a wrong way to grieve, but I would talk to my therapist and say like, I just feel like, am I avoiding it? Am I too numb? Am I too this? Am I too that? And she was like, no, also at times you're compartmentalizing.
Yeah.
And I hear compartmentalizing and I think about boys compartmentalizing. So I think, great, now I'm an idiot.
Now I'm dumb as fuck. Yeah,
literally.
Great.
Literally. And I'm like, now I'm like horrible with my emotions, whatever.
My emotions are over.
Yes. And she was like, no, compartmentalizing when done healthily can be a good thing.
Yeah.
She's like, you don't need to be crying on the floor 24/7. And if that's you and that's where you're at, I've been there as well. Like it's okay, but you don't have to do that 24/7 for it to like make your grief more valid or for you to be handling it in a healthy way. I do think that it is important to, if you are able to compartmentalize and do something that maybe is a distraction for a couple of hours. I actually think that's very healthy.
Yeah. And I think speaking about that, like compartmentalizing, I totally feel that as well, because when you're going through grief, and like you said earlier, it's like, we got to live with this for the rest of our lives. Awesome. But there's so many beautiful things that have happened in my life since my dad has passed. And every time these things happen, I'm like, wish my dad was here for that. Wish my dad could see that, right? And, you hear people say like, oh, your dad was watching you. And like, sure, that's great, but he actually wasn't. He actually wasn't here. Like, I hear you, but like, there's a lot of things you hear when you're grieving that you're like, shut the fuck up. I'm like, don't.
What are your like favorite ones? An insane thing to say.
I don't know, because it's also amplified of like having a social media presence. So I'm sure it's like definitely no malice from anyone. And like previous to me experiencing the loss of my dad, I didn't know what the fuck to say during this stuff too. So I think that's one thing you learn. It's like until you're there and grief is knocking at your door, like you don't know how it's going to be. But I think definitely like when I ran the marathon, I think I often said like I felt like my dad was with me, but then like strangers were like, oh my God, your dad was watching you. And I was like, yeah, like that's so nice. And it is, but I think it's so hard to hear that when all you want is that person to be there. Yeah. So I think the most challenging thing that I've been dealing with after grief is obviously the loss and kind of rebuilding the structure of my life. Like it was really hard to go home for the holidays. That was like going to my childhood home, seeing my dad's stuff in boxes. He's not there, just not having his voice at the table and his comments there. Like it was really having to create new memories of what Christmas at home is going to be like, as an example. And so that was just kind of challenging to just like get a new reality of what life is like and really have to just rip off the Band-Aid there. But then I think as good things happened, like on the marathon day, I was celebrating with my family, but it's bittersweet. You can't really celebrate. But I think I've learned that like when good things happen, you have to celebrate them. You can't just be like down in the dumps and like, oh my God, my dad and this and that. Like if you get a good moment, you really have to embrace it. And I think experiencing grief has really allowed for me to experience joy. Like, I think I seek it out so intentionally. I really care about the people in my life more than I did before. I'm really honest and like earnest and just, I don't hold back in my relationships anymore. I think I'm just wearing my heart on my sleeve because you really never know when stuff's going to happen. Like my dad's death was just so stark that it's really just changed me and how I look at everything in life. But I think with the bad stuff, like you really have to be your own cheerleader, really celebrate the good stuff because you could be down in the dumps every day if you like wanted to be that way too, which trust me, I was. Like I'd finish my run, I'd get home, I'd cry. I'd call my mom, I'd cry, then I would do something else and then I would wake up and do it again, So the first few months are definitely weird. Mm-hmm. Definitely weird.
No, I mean, I didn't leave my room for a month, probably. Yeah. I mean, I literally sat in my bed and needle pointed. Like, that was like all I did.
Hobbies.
But literally, thank God I have hobbies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it changes every aspect of you. Like, it changes your perspective. It changes literally everything, even to the point where it's like things that you wouldn't expect, like a Verizon call. Like, you have to handle all of that stuff. But it changes friendships. It changes relationships. It changes what you want, your priorities. Like, so many just like random things. Also, it's like just when it's like dumb drama and stuff and people, I was like one of two ways. Like sometimes I liked when people were talking about like dumb drama to me because I liked the dumb distraction.
Yeah, totally.
But then if you caught me on the wrong day, I'm like, this is so fucking
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Like why would you come to me right now and talk about this dumb thing? Just talk to them. I don't give a fuck. Like,
do it. Like
so angry. There are parts of it too where I feel like ugly sometimes. Like because grief is very ugly.
Yes.
And there's just days where I'm like, I hate that I feel this way or that I have this perspective or that I'm so angry or that I'm
bitter.
Or it's like, I hate it. Like I feel, I don't know. It's just hard. And it's hard sometimes. Like I don't like asking for help. Like I don't like asking people to show up.
Same girl. Yeah.
So it's hard in friendships even. I mean, my friends have been so amazing. Like the ones that have consistently showed up, seriously. But like, even then, it's just so fucking hard.
Yeah. And I think it's been challenging too. I've always had really big emotions. Like I've always been a drama queen my whole life, just crying all the time, dancing, like all the stuff. But grief is another wave of just huge emotions where, like you said, I'll be walking outside and then I'll, be in the West Village. I'll see a dad with his like son and they're going to the playground and I'll just start crying, right? Like there's so many little things that make you nostalgic. But there's been so many beautiful things. Like I think I've always been really, really close with my mom, call her like every single day. My sister and I have texted every single day after my dad has passed. And like, there's just been a lot of really special relationships that I think you are able to go to the depths with people. Like, I think I had some friends where maybe I wouldn't talk to them about certain stuff. But now when it's like, okay, they know my dad has passed, let's just rip off the Band-Aid. And I feel like we've made so much progress in friendship because it's like, we're just being vulnerable and open and you have to be in some ways. But previously, I think I was always shy to wear my emotions on my sleeve safe because I was like, ooh, I'm going to scare people away. Ooh, I'm going to be too much. Especially with dating and all of that. I was just always worried about being too much. And like grief, I feel like way more than I ever was in terms of my emotions too.
I want to talk about dating in the context of like loss and grief.
Yeah.
Because this is something, I mean, I have been very open about the podcast this entire week on the podcast. We've been batching like 10 episodes and I'm like, I'm ready to find love. Like,
yeah.
I keep saying like, I just woke up one day and whatever. Obviously, there is some connection to the loss.
There is.
Too, because it's like now, and I don't, like, yes, I do feel very lonely. Like, I will say that. I've never felt that in my life.
Yeah,
so
totally.
I know it is a grief thing.
Yeah.
But also, I keep checking myself and I'm like, am I just trying to like find a distraction or like find something to avoid or whatever? And it's like, no, sometimes you can just want good things in your life. And also
totally.
like my priorities, it's like, I want a family.
Yeah.
Like I want like a healthy marriage and I want kids. And now more than ever, when I realize how big of a priority that is, I think it's natural to want it.
Yeah.
But that was one of like, obviously not at all the first thing, but like when I was coming out of like I feel like I'm still in my haze, but like I'm 5 months out almost now. I mean, by the time this episode goes up, it'll be later. But like even 3 months in, when I started thinking about like being a little social or something, I'm like, just the thought about dating is so daunting.
Yeah. Like doing the like, where are you from? Tell me about your family. It's like, oh, do you want to hear the PG version or like the in-depth version of my family? It was challenging for me. I think I was in a really bad relationship the past year when my dad passed. And I think I just had like a lot of bad connotations about dating, just dating in New York City, dating apps. So after my dad passed, I took a few months off of dating just because I was like, I don't even have the time for like to have my own thoughts coherent. Like I could not go on a first date and like care about someone else, right? Like I'm not in a good place to take on someone else's life, so not going to put myself out there. But when I was home for Christmas, like my parents, like best friends, lovers, I was going through a lot of my dad's stuff, and my dad, not very emotional, like never saw my dad cry in his life. Maybe at my sister's wedding, like a little tear, right? But he kept all of these like love letters that my mom wrote to his office, and he kept all these birthday cards, these really shitty birthday cards that we made like all throughout my life for him. And so just seeing how much he cared about our family. And like we went through his wallet, he had photos of all of us in there. So seeing all of that stuff, especially from my dad, who is not emotional at all, and my mom, who's super lovey-dovey, like over the top emotional, I had always known that I really valued love and relationships. But I think I have always been very hyper independent. Like didn't have my first kiss till I was 20, moved to New York City when I was 18. I'm gonna do the girl boss thing, right? Like I had all of that implanted in my head at a really young age that I was like, I'd internalized this idea that I was not lovable and that like I'm not going to be in a relationship, I'm going to die alone. Like I think that just made it easier for me to like not even think that it was an option for me because I was more of a late bloomer. And then after my dad passed, I realized like, let's be honest, you really want that. You really want a relationship. And I tried to date in New York and it never really worked out. I feel like just the culture here and just touch and go with dating apps and ghosting and all of that, I'd never found anything meaningful. And I remember just journaling. I journal all the time. Like every single day I journal, love it. It's kept me sane through a lot of parts of life.
Same.
But like when I was journaling, I was just like, I have this desire to have a partner. Like I really want that. I remember the first few months when I would just like go home to my like one bedroom and like cry to myself to sleep, like I was like, I don't want a partner where I'm just crying to them and like giving all of my emotions to them and just vomiting on them. But how beautiful it is to have a partnership, right? Like when I saw my parents' marriage and just all that they did and like raising my twin brother with disabilities and like the amount of things that they were able to make it through together, I think that really cemented that I want to be in love and I want to do that. So after journaling and reflecting and going home with family, I was like, all right, let's get back in the streets. Let's try it again. And like all my friends were like, you got it, like first dates. And like, I've never been weird about first dates. I'm like, whatever, just show up and yap. Like it's easy for me to do. But I think I'd always put like an insane amount of pressure on myself when I was dating previously of like, oh, he didn't text me back. I must be ugly. I must be this. There must be something wrong with me. I'm the worst. Goodbye. Right? Versus like, they're another person. They have their own thing. Did I even like them? Are we asking that? Right? So when I'd gone on like some first dates, I think I finally was starting to just show up as myself. I think with grief, you don't become more selfish, but I think you become a lot more specific with how you want to spend your energy and your time. So when things were not there, and maybe I was like, in the past, I could convince myself like, oh, I should go on a second date with him. He was nice. Now I'm just like, fuck no. That's not the guy. move on, you know? I think it helped to solidify really, really what I wanted. And now I'm in a relationship, like extremely happy, lovey-dovey. And it's a place that I never thought I would be in, especially after loss, like you mentioned. It's been this beautiful thing where, once again, I wish my dad could have met my boyfriend. Like there's a lot of these like what ifs and things that I'm really sad about. But at the same time, to kind of have this as, you know, a birth of something new after experiencing a loss has been really beautiful. And there's a book I read called Lost and Found that talks about this exact concept.
I have it on my Kindle.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And similarly, like the author gets into a relationship like right after she loses her parent. And yeah, it's profound. I think life is this kind of thing where everyone loses people, new things happen every single day. And it's bizarre for us to kind of hold those things together that like, I just lost my dad, but at the same time, like someone just gave birth to their first child and someone just got married. And I think once you wrestle with those kind of complicated beliefs that feel like they are opposed to each other and realize that like life is a big melting pot of all these things together, I think you really can experience like the joy and the love and like the happiness again. But it was really bizarre to date again because I felt like I was like, okay, tell me about your family. It's like, okay, like my dad and my mom are from here, right? And I think I found myself even on first dates, like I was talking in the past and the present tense about my dad. And I didn't think maybe the people I was going on a date with knew what I was talking about because I felt like I was super confused and hiding something. But then at the same time, I was like, look, this is like an hour-long first date. I don't need to like dump on them. But with my now boyfriend, it was like a few dates in where I just kind of was like, hey, just for context, like my dad passed in September. And, being on social media, I'm pretty sure at that point he'd like looked at my social media, had already like known that, but he didn't hear it from me. So then I was able to open up about it and like, very close to him now, can talk to him about that all the time. So it's been beautiful, but definitely challenging at first to like open up that kind of can of worms to talk about it.
That's the part that I'm dreading on the dates when they ask like, oh, your siblings. And I'm like, oh, I don't even know how to like,
yeah.
I'm like, I don't even, that, that's why in an ideal world I date like mutual friends. So
right. They know.
They know.
Yeah.
How long were you dating before you went on a date with your boyfriend?
I maybe went on like one other first date before I met him.
Wow.
Yeah, I was very lucky.
You are so...
Oh, I know. I'd been in the Hinge jail for like years in New York City of like, I was like chronically the friend of like, so what bad first date did you go on this week? Yeah. And I'm like, can I stop being the butt of the joke here? Like, can something good happen to me? And it was very easy. And I'd always heard that from my sister who's married and my mom. I'm just like, it's so easy and it's going to be natural. I'm like, it's never been easy or natural for me. I'm reading between the lines of these like fuckboys texts. Like I have no idea what they're saying to me, right? And I'm dating them for 3 months. I don't even know if they like me, right? So I had all this like fucked up dating experience. And I think being in a healthy relationship for the first time gave me so much anxiety. And especially after grief, right? Like everything in life right now, I'm waiting for something to fall apart, which is not good. And I need to work on that. It's something I reflect on a lot of like, it's not going to just fall apart, like you're not going to break your leg tomorrow. This bad thing's not going to happen to you. But after my dad passed, I think that was where my brain shifted of like, get ready for the worst, get ready for you to like lose your job, lose this, lose that, because that's kind of what I had known. So once I was in like a healthy relationship, I was just anxious as fuck. I was like, when's he just going to fall off the face of the earth? When is he just going to ghost me, right? And that never happened. And he continued to like show up for me, support me, especially like supporting me through grief, which has been like phenomenal and just like something I never imagined in a partner. But it definitely is like anxiety inducing to be in a healthy place with love and relationships.
I feel so similarly, or like when you're waiting for the ball to drop. Less of that I think another bad thing is going to happen, more that I don't think anything good will happen to me.
Exactly.
So I constantly, that's what I say to my friends every single day. I rotate between like 3 friends and I'm texting about things and I'll give one of them a break, give them a couple days off, go to the next one, like whatever. And that's what I keep saying. I'm like, when will something good happen?
Oh, I know.
And really I want to like find someone. Like that is really, I'm like, well, even if something good happened, like Kenzie wouldn't be.
You're like, I ran 10 miles today, but fuck, I'm single. Yeah.
Literally. And also I'm also dealing with like, I've never been the girl who's like wanted a partner.
Yeah.
So
same.
that also feels weird.
I know. It's like a new identity that you have to take on. And I think for me, one thing that I was just on a solo trip in Portugal, and I'm very much in a new chapter of my life where it's been, almost a year since my dad has passed in September. I'm going to be, in a relationship. I'm doing content full time. Like there's a lot of things that have solidified for me, but I think I'm still living in this like very previous version of myself that I'm not anymore, right? Like I kind of relate this to when I had an eating disorder. I think one of the things that really helped me get out of it was that I was just picturing myself as someone with an eating disorder. And like, this is what I have to do because I have an issue. I can't go get ice cream because this is me. And once I was like, you don't have to be like that. You know, you do not have to continue to show up that way and make those decisions. Like you are allowed to change your identity and be a person that goes out and eats with your friends and eats ice cream and eats a second portion of dinner, whatever. So when I was in, the early stages of my relationship and kind of as I was reflecting on this solo trip, like I am now in a secure relationship, right? I am also having to simultaneously move through the world without my dad. And these are things that are constants now, right? Like I can choose to show up as this newer version of myself and really like accept that and honor that. And I think one thing that I like doing, it's like inner child work, journaling stuff, super like hippie.
I love this stuff.
No, I love, is like an exercise that, I don't remember what book I got this from, but you envision like previous versions of yourself and like kind of taking them along with you on a walk. Like, as I'm running the Big Sur Marathon, I really thought about like the girl that I was when I like had an eating disorder. All I wanted to do was be thin. And now like I'm at the heaviest I've ever been. I'm running a marathon, my second marathon in 2 months or in 6 months. Sorry. Like I am doing so many really astounding things that I never thought were possible. Right. And so the past few months, I've just been thinking about like anxious, sad Kate that was dealing with just like the worst dating stuff and kind of telling her like, no, it's okay. Like you can put that stuff to rest. Like you don't have to be like, when is the ball going to drop when you are moving through life anymore? But it's once again, a constant like choice you have to make every single day to like show up and like really try to become that version of yourself you want to be. Cause it's not natural. Like you're going to fall back into like whatever old like negative stories you tell yourself. But I think it's this like opportunity to really rewrite what you want to think about yourself. And kind of the more and more you say it, I think it becomes more natural and then it becomes habitual. And like, that's who you are now.
I feel like for me, it's not even just saying it every day. It's like every hour.
Yeah, I know it is. Literally like our emotions throughout a day, it's crazy. Yes. I wake up and I feel one thing and by the end of the day, I'm like, I'm a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like I've run through like 50 different lives in this day.
No, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
But even just like certain thought patterns or really what I'm really trying to work on is believing that good things will happen.
Yes.
But like, let's say something good happens and I'm with someone and I like them and they're cool and like, I feel like just like whatever it is, I'm constantly
like waiting.
Yeah. It's like I know the things that I need to tell myself and I do them and it will work, but it'll wear off. Then I do it again. Yeah. It'll wear off. Then I do it again. And so like as I do that, I know eventually it will just obviously last for like a longer period of time and it will be okay, hopefully.
Totally.
But yeah, I'm just like really ready for something good to happen. That's just what I need.
I feel that. And also like when good stuff does happen, it's even hard to honor it. Like, it's hard to trust that it's going to be good and something bad's not going to happen. Even previous to my dad passing, I've always been like that. Like when a good thing happens, I'm like, okay, so when's the shitty thing going to happen? Like when's the next thing going to happen? But I think I've been trying to really be in the present more. You don't know what's going to happen in a month from now, 7 months from now. And my dad always said that to us growing up. Like he traveled a lot in his 20s and he was like, look, when you have your health, when you have money, when you have opportunities, do it. You don't know if something's going to happen, if you're going to, negative things are going to happen to you in your life. Regardless, like bad and good things happen to everyone. But it's like really being in the present is so fucking challenging to do. Cause I'm always thinking about the past and dwelling on like, oh, my dad passed and this, and I wish this could have been different. And then my anxiety about the future and like, oh, what's the future going to be? What's it going to be like 6 months from now? And I think I've just had to give up future planning. Like my sister's super type A, like plans and is very, very organized Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing next month. I don't need to know. Like I'm here right now. Like things could happen and things could dramatically change it. So I'm going to take it week by week.
That's how I am now. And before I was a lot more like your sister. Yeah. But now I keep telling everyone like I'm in my Eat, Pray, Love summer.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's really, I'm just like leaving space. Whatever happens.
Totally.
I really have no plans. Yeah. Honestly.
No, same. It is kind of scary to just like submit kind of like, I think we have this false sense of control that like, if I do X, Y, and Z, it's going to lead to X, Y, Z outcome. And I think once you realize like, oh, wow, like crazy things could happen today that would dramatically change all of that. I think that's the hardest part, because if you told me like last year, like if you gave me like, let's say like a fortune teller gave me 5 years from now, this is going to happen and here's how your life is going to play out. I don't think any of us would want to go down that to know what's going to happen in the next 5 years of your life. But if you told me last year, like you're going to lose your dad in 20 days, I don't think I would have wanted to show up, you know, like I don't think I would have wanted to do it. And then if you're just like forced into these moments, like I guess that's all you can do is just take it day by day. But it is hard because I feel like control has always been a theme that I've struggled with throughout life of like, I want to control how I look. I want to control if this person likes me. And now I'm at a point where it's like, I don't even know if I have control over anything.
Yeah.
Like you really don't.
You have control over literally nothing.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate.
I know. I wish we could all just control our lives, but
yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. But then at the same time, like I was really reflecting on like being in love and that came out of nowhere for me. And I was once again very intentional with what I wanted because I hate the TikTok dating advice that like it's going to happen when you're not looking and like your boyfriend's going to fall out of the sky. Like that's bullshit. I think you can totally have agency and you can totally have a list of things you're looking for and like intentionally seek that out. Like I was on dating apps. I knew like exactly the characteristics I wanted in my boyfriend. I knew what I wanted a relationship to feel like for me. I knew I wanted certain like levels of support and kind of a depth of the relationship. And that's where I am now. But I didn't know how I was going to show up and I didn't know how I was going to get there. I didn't know who it was going to be. I didn't know like how that was going to be there. But I think it is a beautiful thing to just kind of like let things happen, right? If I had been super, super controlling and like, I need this person to look this way and it to happen this way, I don't think I would have ended up where I am now either.
I love the sentiment right now that your entire life can change in an hour.
Yeah.
You could meet someone, you could get an opportunity, you could end up moving. Like, anything can happen in literally the span of an hour. Like you don't know. That's what I keep telling myself. I'm like, I could wake up tomorrow and something so drastic, like positive could happen. Like it's so interesting that we focus so much on the ball dropping,
negative,
but we never think like, oh, something good will happen.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm trying my best to try to think that way.
Totally.
And like attract that into my life.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. Another question I had for you in dating, like I'm a very vulnerable person. I'm very open. I have no issue talking about anything with anyone.
Same.
But in dating, it's a little bit harder for me. I don't feel, not necessarily, I feel like I am vulnerable. I think I'm gonna, for whatever, I don't know, maybe I'm not gonna be this way in dating and I've just built this whole thing up in my head. But I'm worried about,
like grief.
I'm anxious about talking about grief in dating.
Yeah.
Because I also don't want to feel like I'm too much. I don't want to like trauma dump on that person.
Every single day I'm like, damn, I'm so much. She's going to get so tired of me.
But like, that's see,
not real.
When you say that, I know the answer.
Yeah,
but when
exactly.
I say
it is.
You know?
I feel the same way. And I think, yeah, it's so hard. It took a while for me to open up about my dad. And obviously, I think as I approached dating, like, when I went on some first dates, I didn't really talk about it because I was like, this is a first date. This is practically an interview. Like, they don't deserve to hear about that. And also, I don't want to dump that on them, right? Like, I'm making the choice to not talk about this. And if we get to date whatever, I'll let them know, right? But right now, they're pretty much a stranger in my life. So, like, they don't need to know this shit. But then as I progressed with my boyfriend, it felt like I was leaving something out of the picture. Especially as it related to like when I was talking about marathon training and I was just home for the holidays and we started talking when I was home for Christmas. And so he was like, how's Christmas? And I was like, kind of fucking hate it. Kind of sucks. And this, I was not saying that because I hadn't met him at that point. But I remember being like, if this gets somewhere, I need to like tell him about all this stuff, right? And it was challenging as well because, like you said, I didn't want to be too much, especially in the early stages of dating. Like, you don't want to seem like you're lying to your partner or you're being shady or you're leaving stuff out. But then at the same time, it was like, wow, I don't want to just like throw up intense medical trauma on you about my dad, right? But it is a part of you. And I think I was saying to my boyfriend, like, if you had met me previous to my dad passing, I was an entirely different person, right? Like, grief changes you in so many different ways. And it makes so much sense that my dad had passed when you look at how I am now. And when I was in the early stages of our relationship and like things that I was prioritizing and I was really showing up in our relationship and I was training for a marathon and, I was really like, I'm going to go on a date with my boyfriend. I don't care if I have 15 miles tomorrow, whatever. Like, I want that in my life so much that I'm going to compromise the running a little bit. And it was kind of funny because I was facing a little bit of injuries as I finished that marathon training cycle. And my PT was like, you were on such a good path and like you were running so fast and you were like all these times. And then like I had like a weird like hip thing come up and just kind of nagging pain. Like I had to go entirely off my marathon training plan. Like, I was not following the plan at all. Like, I was hobbling through the race just to finish. And it was funny. I opened up to my PT mic one day. I was like, he's like so confused about what was going wrong. And I was like, I have a boyfriend. Like, yeah, I haven't been sleeping much. And I've been eating Chick-fil-A at 3 a.m. Like, he was like, what? Like, I'm just like health and wellness salad girl. Yeah. He's like, oh, you really must be in love. I was like, yeah. But I think allowing myself to make that choice, right? Like I would have really regretted it if I was like telling my boyfriend like, nope, I can't hang out with you. I got to go run 15 miles tomorrow. Like, sorry. And so I think once you're in those moments, it's like, you're just going to decide based on feel, right? And it does feel really vulnerable and scary to cry on someone's shoulder, especially when like they haven't gone through it either. Like my boyfriend hasn't experienced grief in the same way that I have. So it feels just very abrupt and scary and a lot. But I think the biggest thing that's helped me like reassurance is like, he's been great through it, but I think grief is a part of you and you can't hide it. You can't beat around the bush about it. It's really integral to like how we operate. And I think it's really allowed for me to prioritize love more, right? And prioritize joy and just seeing a lot of like beautiful things in the world that maybe I would have just walked by prior to my dad passing. Like just walking down the street, head down, not really looking at the sky and looking for a sunset or looking for some birds chirping. Now I'm really looking for all of that and really prioritizing like each opportunity I do have with a friend or a family member, because I'm like, not like thinking, oh, it's going to be my last time with them, but I really want to soak in what I do have, you know?
Yeah. I'm curious, what are some things that your boyfriend has done that have been helpful for you in your grief? Let's say someone's listening to this and they have a partner who is grieving and they have no idea what to do. Like, what would be your advice for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just allowing that person to talk, because I think, you know, my boyfriend never met my dad. And that's something that I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life. It's like really hard to kind of wrap that around my head that he doesn't know who my dad was. And I can only describe my dad so many times and show so many videos and whatever. But I think allowing for, you know, your partner to talk about that person they're grieving and like really get in depth or talk about memories or like, oh, my dad used to do that one thing and whatever. Like there'd been a lot of times when we're dating where I'll just start crying about something and he like doesn't necessarily get it. And then I explain, it's like, oh, my dad did this. Like one of them as an example, a book that I read about grief called Signs, which is really good. It's a very spiritual book talking about like connecting with your loved ones after they've passed and like seeing signs out in the universe. And it gives you a roadmap to kind of set up a sign with your loved one. And it was interesting for me, like I post about Snoopy a lot on my social media, and it was a few months before my dad had passed, I started seeing Snoopy everywhere. And like, I'm from Minnesota. And so like the creator of Peanuts, Charles Schultz, is from Minnesota. So like growing up, there'd been a lot of photos with me as a kid with like these Snoopy statues and like Camp Snoopy in the Mall of America, a lot of like memories with that. But it was so bizarre because it was the day that I got my dad's cancer diagnosis. I went to this thrift store and I saw this like belt that had like a Snoopy belt buckle. And I remember I snapped a photo of it and like put it on my Instagram. I was like, oh, this is so cute. I love Snoopy, right? Then my mom called me and was like, Dad has cancer. He's dying, whatever. I go to the hospital in Minnesota when I was like rushed home, and my brother and I went to the cafeteria at lunch and there was a Snoopy candy bar there. And I was like, this is weird. And then I started seeing it everywhere. And I'm not kidding, everywhere. And obviously it's probably amplified now on social media when people like DM me Snoopy stuff. But I was seeing it just on t-shirts outside. I was seeing it on posters. There were so many bizarre ways that sign was showing up for me. And so like having people in your life almost like validate that kind of like the spiritual hippie, like crazy aspect of grief where like whenever I see that, I feel like my dad is talking to me, right? Like my boyfriend just went on a trip and he got me some Snoopy things. And I thought that was just like very cute that he's like, whenever I see Snoopy, I think of you, like obviously. So I think allowing your partner to grieve and just not feel like they're doing too much, I think is the most important. Because it is kind of confusing how it does come up, especially like you said, I think when you are grieving, you are very self-aware that you don't want to trauma dump. But at the same time, it's like, is this valuable for me to share? Is this too much? So I think just, you know, supporting your partner as they need to.
Also, I don't want people to feel depressed because I'm around them. Like, I don't want
like it to be sad. Like, you don't have to ask me about it right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want people to feel like my worst nightmares are like, oh, I don't want to hang out with Kenzie.
Yeah. Like she has a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that is literally my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like it's very similarly. It's like you don't want to be too much, but then you don't want to like, my fear is that I close off completely to where I don't let anything in.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a dance.
I think it was hard for me. Like before I met my boyfriend, I was going to like, you know, New York, like friends' birthdays or like gatherings and stuff like that. And so I would show up and like feel totally fine. But I felt like everyone was looking at me like, oh, Kate's dad just died. You know, like,
yeah.
And these people all loved me and cared about me. And so they wanted to check in with me and like genuinely great friends. But I still felt like I was just having some like big thing on my forehead and everyone is looking at me, right? So I think that is challenging, especially maybe if people in your life haven't experienced grief as well, where you feel like you're an alien. And I think at those points, I've just had to talk to my sister or talk to my mom, like talk to someone who gets it when you do feel like it is kind of out of proportion of like the crazy grief stuff where maybe someone who hasn't been through it can't relate. Like genuinely, I think some of my friends, no ill will, but they like haven't gone through it and they're just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to say here, or I don't know what to do. But then again, they want to be there for you. They want to support you. But like you said, it's like, they don't want to treat you like you're a person with a problem, or like, I always have to ask you about the bad things, but I don't want to ignore it and pretend like we're not talking about it too. But yeah, I just think as long as like friends are checking in on you, I think that was the nicest thing after like my dad had passed. Just knowing that people are thinking about you even when like they don't have to be, if that makes sense. Because I think it's easy for people to check in and be like, happy birthday, or like, congrats on the marathon. But it was like when a friend would text me out of the blue, like, thinking of you, like, how are you doing? Like, would love to catch up with you or something like that. I think those are kind of the impactful like relationships, or I guess like what I remember from like the early stages of grief.
I feel very similarly. Also, what you said about when you're out and you feel like everyone's looking at you. Like, I couldn't even go back to my workout gym for a bit because I was like, I just know that they're thinking about that, and I just can't even can't add anything. I'm so fragile right now. I can't.
Or if someone looks at me, I'm gonna start crying.
Yeah, literally.
That's what I felt like too.
That's what I mean. Like, I just like can't. And then if someone were to like say they're sorry in person at this point, it took it took everything out of me to even get to this class. I can't. I'll leave. Like, I just can't do it. But I also feel like it's given me like some sort of social anxiety.
Yeah.
Because I recognize that I'm not fully myself right now. So when I'm out, even I was at dinner with like 20 people the other night, this past weekend, and I was just like so in my head because I'm like, I know that I'm not fully myself. So I feel weird. And even if I'm not maybe acting weird to like the normal person, I'm acting like myself. So I feel weird. And then it just goes into this like this spiral of, I mean, it is social anxiety, obviously.
Totally.
But it takes me down this spiral. And I'm like, okay, it's good that you're even out doing anything. You don't need to be.
It is so good. I think it is so good to get out there. It is really hard because you want to just sit at home and do nothing. But I think I have almost, in certain situations socially, like there's people that know you really well where I feel like you can talk about whatever. There's no taboo subject. But a lot of times when it is acquaintances or people you don't know, I don't think I'm hiding anything, but I think I will just be very blunt with it. Like, example, there's been some conversations I've had at like parties or whatever. People are talking about something and I'm just like, yeah, okay, my dad died last September. And then I'll continue on with whatever I was talking about, like as it comes up in whatever conversation we were having. I remember someone was talking about like Father's Day. And I was like, yeah, my dad passed, but whatever. Like, okay, this is this. And I think for me to be so blunt and direct about it, I think it's very shocking to people just to be like, my dad passed. But at the same time, I think if they do want to talk more, or maybe they feel bad, or maybe they feel like, ooh, is she okay? They can ask more, right? If they want to. But I think I've also really wanted to just tell people that like, you're not going to be quote normal, whatever normal is for you, but I still think you can show up. Because I think I had this vision of like, oh, I'm just going to be in bed for the rest of my life. You know, I'm not going to be able to do anything. Like, it's going to feel so defeating and so hard to do anything. And it definitely is. But I think I'm really proud of myself for continuing to live and continuing to maintain my friendships and go out and do stuff that like previous me probably wouldn't have done. But now I almost look at it as like, this is an opportunity. Like, not even just like my dad would be like pissed at me for not doing X, Y, and Z and just sitting on my ass and doing nothing. That comes in a little bit where I'm like, your dad is going to want you to do that. Go do that thing, right? Like, just don't worry about that for a little bit of your moment. Like, for your life, you're allowed to have good moments. But it is really hard to wrestle with like the social aspect of it because you don't know some people as well as you know other people, like I said. But I think being blunt and direct about it, I think shows people that like, hey, I've gone through something really hard, but also I'm still here in this moment. Like, we can still talk, we can laugh, we can talk about like gossip and celebrity bullshit and like little stupid stuff too. But at the same time, there is an extreme amount of depth to me. Like, I do have a lot of emotional vulnerability. I have a lot I could tell you about, but also like, I'm just here too. You know, like kind of normalizing that. I think one thing that I've kind of tried to emphasize to my friends that haven't experienced loss is like, not to scare them of like, you're going to go through it, but everyone's going to grieve. You know? And I think once you know that, like, I wish almost someone would have told me perhaps of like, you are going to lose your parents at some point in your life. that's tough. That's crazy to say out loud. I don't know when it's going to be, and I don't want to know when it's going to be, but that's the thing you're going to have to deal with. Right. And I think after my dad passed, I was just scared as fuck about losing my mom. Like I had anxiety. I was like, oh my God. Like every time my mom called me, I was like, are you okay? Like, what's going on?
I'm like that my whole
and it's really intense and it's really scary, but it does force you to live in the present more. Like just, okay, well, here's where I am right now. I can call my mom right now and I can call my brother right now. But it is really disorienting. Like that you can think about such like deep traumatic shit and then you can kind of snap back and like go throughout your day.
Yes. And I think people just don't realize that so many different emotions, extreme emotions even, can coexist. Something that really, really bothered me. I'm really not the grief police. Like people can say things to me and it rarely bothers me.
Yeah.
Like, I understand, like we lost my stepbrother like 5 years ago. I've gone through the whole, like I understand people are just trying their best. So I'm really not, like there's certain, there's certain things, like people were commenting that they lost their dog. So they get it. Like that was, that was a little far. Yeah. But like, there's just certain things, it doesn't typically,
like annoy you.
Yes, but no one was like, oh, this is the thing that was, oh my God, I could have punched someone. It was like probably 4 or 6 weeks after. And I was like starting to like film stuff. I was starting to do more things. And people would talk to me or my best friend Macy, and they'd be like, Kenzie seems like she's doing so great, so much better.
Oh, I hate that.
Oh, the projecting. My God. It's like, you just want me to feel better so you don't have to feel bad for me.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about it, so you don't have to feel bad for me. Obviously, I'm not doing better. I just have to live this life.
Yeah.
And like, I'm trying my best to make this life like worth living.
Totally.
Like, I'm doing everything I possibly can. Obviously, I am not doing better.
Yeah.
But that in itself, and then I think it gives people, they're like, well, I don't have to check in. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. And oh my God, I mean,
yeah.
Oh my God, it makes you so angry.
Yeah, the projections are hard because like you can't control what people think or kind of how they want you to like appear. And I definitely felt that pressure like when I was running the marathon. Like I felt like, people weren't looking at me for me to get some crazy time. So it wasn't like this athletic pressure I felt, but I definitely felt the pressure of like showing up, right? Like New York City Marathon, there's 50,000 people that run it. Most of my social media following's in New York City. People knew regardless that this was going to be my first marathon and it was going to be the first one I've ever run off an injury. And it was like very hard for me to get healthy to that race line. 2 months before the race, I lose my dad, right? So now there's this other kind of like watching me a little bit. Like I felt like a very weird sense of like surveillance of like, I'm running this race and like so many people are watching me. And I know not everyone is like fixated on me, but definitely I think the social media following like amplified that. And I knew I was going to be able to finish it. Like I knew in my heart and everything that it was going to be a great race day. And it genuinely was. Like the sun was shining. I didn't have any pain in my body somehow.
Wow.
I saw all my friends and family. Like I ran a pretty good time, even though I like stopped a bunch and like hugged people. Like I'm really proud with how I showed up on that day. But I think it was really tough because a lot of people were like, oh my God, it looked like you had the best day ever. And I remember I wrote something on my Instagram and I was like, hey guys, so like it was great, but like my dad was supposed to be there. Like there were texts that my mom had and it was like, I think it was a few days after the cancer diagnosis, my dad was like, I need to start like walking more so I can get to the race healthy. And I really want to be there for you. And like, I was already picturing, I remember when we got the cancer diagnosis of like, okay, don't know really what these next, few months are going to look like, but maybe my dad will be there in a wheelchair. Maybe he'll be able to FaceTime me. Maybe he'll be able to something, right? Like I was already thinking about alternatives. I did not think it was going to be he passed before the marathon. And so when people were projecting of like, you had the perfect day and it was great. Like people don't know the whole time I was running, I was just like, fuck this to a degree. I was like, fuck, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I wanted my life to be. But here I am. It's a beautiful day. This is a tremendous opportunity I have in front of me. So I'm going to go race it and I'm going to have a smile on my face. I think a lot of people were like, I'm so shocked that you were smiling on race day. And I'm like, did you want me to cry on race day? Like, what was I supposed to do? Like you said, I think you're forced to just live your life. And however you show up, people I think will be a little bit like critical of it or have comments on it. But it is challenging because you just wish you could be like, fuck you. Like you don't know what's going on in my life. But yeah, I think most of it is not malicious. I think people are just like excited and like happy for you. But it is hard to hear when they don't know like the depths of kind of the bad stuff. Because I think like you and I are both very honest with going through grief. Like we're not hiding anything. We talk about how much it sucks, how, whatever has come from it. But at the same time, like I don't share my darkest things on social media.
Absolutely, yeah.
You guys are getting like a really sanitized version of how I feel.
They are getting like, believe it or not, like some sort of almost, I don't want to say highlight reel.
No, yeah, you're getting the highlight.
But you're getting the highlight reel of my grief journey. Like
you're not getting the worst.
Yeah, you're not even near the worst.
Exactly.
Like, that's what I always say to people when I'm trying to explain grief. I'm like, picture what you think it would be and then multiply it by 1,000,000.
Yeah.
And then you might be getting close.
Totally.
It's so different. It's interesting though, because I have never gotten more comments, and maybe it's just people like trying to like think that it's like cheering me up, but I get DMs all the time. Even people who have said this to me in real life that like don't really like know the situation. They're like, you are glowing. Like you seem like you're doing so great. You seem whatever. I'm like, I'm crying every fucking day. Like I have never been more depressed. I'm so lonely. Like I'm like, you're like,
no, it's bizarre. I've gotten those too.
I'm like, what about me do you think is giving glowing right now?
Yeah,
like,
it's giving crying.
Yeah, it's giving crying. And I'm like, obviously not every aspect of my life is bad, obviously. Like there are, and I don't want it to come across that way, but when you lose someone so close to you, it's like a giant cloud over everything.
Oh, totally.
It changes everything. So I'm like, it's just like, guys, I'm not glowing. Like, I'm really not.
Thank you, but no.
I'm just not.
Like you actually, to get this glow, you don't need to go through like recent trauma. Like you don't need to lose someone.
No, they're like, what's the glow tutorial? I'm like,
losing someone from death.
Like, is that what you wanted?
Yeah,
like,
you don't want this one. No makeup tips here.
Ask someone else.
Yeah, literally go to the makeup girlies, not me. Yeah, it is funny. I think I've gotten that a lot as I've like, I haven't like posted my boyfriend like on my Instagram, but I posted that I'm like in a relationship, done some soft launches, whatever. But some people are like freaks and like about privacy. I'm like, you guys are not fucking with that aspect of my life that I'm very happy with. But like setting that boundary and stuff, I think it has been funny for people to be like, you look so happy and you're so in love. And I'm like, I am. But also I was crying to that man. Like yesterday, I was sobbing on his shoulder about how fucking sad I am too. So it is interesting. I think there is always projection on social media of like, what's the workout routine? You look so good. Or like creators get that about everything. But with grief, it does feel particularly like fucked up to comment on.
Yeah, very odd.
Yeah.
So literally happy and sad by kissing those graves.
Yeah, literally
how I'm trying to be. So thank you so much for coming on and talking about all this today. Your content has helped me. I mean, I know I've already told you this, but it's helped me so much.
It's so great.
Anyone who's listening who's going through anything grief-wise, like, please follow her. Also, join your run club. I'm sure there's so many New York girls listening.
Oh my God, yeah. We host it once a month. Open to all paces, all abilities. It's really fun. And I feel like it's a really good place to meet like-minded people too. So definitely come through and run. But yeah, the grief thing, it's crazy. If you're going through it, like, I think allow yourself to show up differently every day and really honor that. You don't know how it's going to be. Like when I first heard about grief, I was like, I'm just going to be crying every day. But then it's like, no, I'm like really nostalgic and like actually fucking angry. Like how it went down medically with my dad. I'm just like, I'm actually pissed about the healthcare system and I want to go to law school because fuck you guys. And I hate the pharmaceutical industry, like whatever. So allow for it to like change you as it comes up, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where can they find you?
Yes. All my social media is just my name. So Kate Glavan. You can find me there primarily like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. So that's where I am.
I also love your YouTube channel.
Yeah, YouTube's great. I wish I'd have gotten on there earlier, honestly. It's like so nice on there. TikTok's kind of crazy, but that's a side tangent.
YouTube's nice.
Yeah, nice. YouTube is nice. Yeah, it's the long form content. I feel like my brain cells are restoring versus being like 7-second video.
I know. Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was so nice to meet you. Thanks so much.